What's up, Python crew? And today I'm going to share with you guys how Python game development can actually make you a better developer. In the world of programming, choosing the right tools can significantly impact your learning experience as well as your overall skill development. So it's important to choose the right ones. For beginners, it's essential to choose these starting tools that are going to provide a solid foundation for all your future growth. Not just in Python, but in programming, in applying the logic in general. And that's what we're going to talk about in today's episode. That's right. Welcome back, guys, to another episode of, you guessed it, Code with Josh, and I'm Josh. If you're new here, do me a favor, head on down and smash the subscribe button, as that does help me reach more students around the world. It is hard, right? And by doing that, you're not only sharing what you've learned here today, but you're helping other students learn too. Before I dive into today's episode, guys, I have created a new extended version of my handcrafted Python guide. And this time, in the starter pack, I've made for you guys a Git starter guide that you can use to get started with Git today. It's the first link in the description. Head on down there and pick yourself up a copy of my handcrafted Python guide you can use on your programming journey. At this point in your learning journey, you should have a really good understanding of the fundamentals of Python. And if you've been following along with me, then I've had a series about how you can master the fundamentals of Python in 7 steps. I'm going to link it somewhere here. But if you missed it, here's what I was talking about. Now, in the last 7 episodes, these are what I guided you guys through. And these are the same steps that I take my students through to help them make sure that they have a core understanding of the foundations of Python, and it continuously builds on our previous exercises. So in the first week, we did the basics of Python: variables, functions, conditions. In week 2, we learned about loops. The while loop and the for loop was all about reusable code, so how you can create your own functions and use them throughout your code. As we progressed into week 5, you can see here that I have our data structures. We talked about our lists, tuples, dictionaries, and sets, and the advantages to each of those. That carried us into week 5. Now this is where today's episode really takes off. Week 5 was all about OOP, or object-oriented programming. And that really is a combination of all the previous weeks put together in one, but this advanced new topic that makes Python special. The last 2 weeks, week 6 and week 7, that carried us into modules and how we can reuse our code in advanced ways, and how using modules can actually strengthen your understanding of Python. How PyGame is going to strengthen you as a developer is actually through OOP, and this is where PyGame is great. By using these modules, that's a topic we learned, you can create objects, that's a topic we learned, and create your own classes, topic we learned, all to create these 2D games, right? And that's what I want to talk to you about today. Now, I'm not going to teach PyGame as a whole or break that down. I'm going to break down the steps of what you can use in the past 7 weeks and how you can apply that to PyGame. And in future episodes, yeah, you guessed it, I'm going to have episodes out to guide you through PyGame, and maybe I'll make longer extended versions, if you guys want to see that, of me creating games for you. If you want to see that, comment below and let me know, and I'll get into that. Alright, let's take a look at the structure of PyGame. Alright, so you can see that I've made a notebook. Now, how I like to code in VS Code, before I even start a project, I like to turn VS Code into my notebook. Take notes, go through each note and think of it as a task, right? That's what you need to achieve in that moment. It makes creating a game so much easier in the long run. Alright, so you can see all of these comments I've made, right? And these are like my notes, right? The pound symbol, the hashtag symbol is a comment in Python and VS Code. So we begin with all of our imports. What are we using for this project? What are our constant variables, right? So what's never going to change? I could create my initial game settings. I want to load in any font or any music that we might use throughout. And you can see that this is kind of just like the game setup, right? That's all that's just happening. Then we would create any game classes we need. Once you make your classes, we're into the objects and then our game loop, right? So in order, this is how I would set up my PyGame projects. Guys, stop. There's many ways to do things, okay? So if you're there thinking in your head, oh, but I learned this way, well, that's fine. That might work for you, right? If this is new to you, this is a different approach, okay? And by learning multiple approaches, that's gonna help you be able to tackle problems more efficiently. There's not one way to do things. There's not one best way to do things. There's multiple ways to do things in programming, and the way you learn how to interpret or speak Python, that's how you can project and write your code. Going on, so what of these might I need right now, right? If I'm taking a look over here, all this stuff, what might we need? Okay, pause the video, write down a few ideas that you might have. Okay, so here's just a few. I've given you a few examples, right? What are we missing? So for my game settings, I need to create a game screen, a title for the game, and then if I want to have a background picture, like those are typically all the settings, right? For font and music, right, is there going to be text in my game? Like a score or a way for us to count collectibles in the game? Is there going to be music? Is there going to be sound effects? Right? You need to be thinking about these. Plan this out. Write this out in your notebook. What do you need first? This makes it so much easier, right? And the last one was objects, right? So what objects are going to be in my game? In the game that I'm going to show you today, I'm going to have a player, enemies, coins. I'm going to have some boundaries, right? All of those could be considered objects. Okay, to fill in the final missing pieces, well, there we are. Right, the modules we need, I'm going to be using PyGame, right? I might need another module. In my game, I'm going to show you I needed random, okay? The variables that are never going to change. The width and height of my game, that's not going to change throughout the game, right? The colors in my game, while I might use 5 or 10 different colors, the color green isn't going to just become the color red in the game. Right? It's a constant variable. It's never changing. Okay? The classes, I'm going to create a superclass that all the objects can use, and then every specific object is probably going to have their own class as well. And in the game loop, this is where I keep all the computer events. I update my game, and I'm constantly checking if my player does something in the game. Alright, I'm going to jump into VS Code and I'm going to show you guys a game that I've put together. Alright, I'm going to break it down and I'm going to share with you how you can apply these notes and this knowledge, bring it into VS Code, and see it all in code. Here I am in one of my projects that I've put together in VS Code. Now you can see over here I have it pretty well organized. I have a main folder. I have a folder containing all the sound effects and the music. I have all the pictures that I'm using, and then I have 2 files. Okay, so currently I'm in my main file. Right now, here's where you're going to see all those notes start to take effect. Okay? And guys, if you're interested in how I did this in this game specifically, this is a capstone project in my flagship 0 to Knowing Python course. If you're interested in that course, it's over 12 hours of full-packed content, taking you from 0 to knowing in no time. It's the link in the description. Head on down there and check out the courses that I have available for you to kickstart your programming journey today. Alright, you can see that I'm using modules, right? And this was an episode in the previous week. All of our modules at the top here. I created all of my constant variables. Remember, these are variables that are never going to change. Okay, width and height of my game. I have my colors. I have a counter variable. Okay. Next up in the route, we had our fonts. I am loading in the font. And then I'm creating 4 font objects, which means somewhere in this game there's going to be 4 different fonts. I'm creating what they're going to say now, and I'm applying the style to them. Next up, I am activating the sound for PyGame, which is done through Mixer. I'm giving it background music, and then I'm loading in 3 sound effects that can also be used when something occurs in my game. The game settings, so here's where we create our game screen, the title, we load in the background picture, it's all done here. Okay, next up in the process would generally be my classes, but because I wanted to use the concept of modules, which we learned about in a previous episode, link here, right, I actually created my own file up top called classes, and inside here is where I kept all the classes I used. So I have a superclass. Remember, everyone can use this. I created a class that only my player can have, and only my player can be controlled by the arrow keys. We have an enemy or the ghost class. I have coins around my game, right? And you can see that the coin, I'm creating a hitbox, a rect, and then I'm loading in the picture. All that this class is really doing is I'm blitting, or I'm pasting the coin on the screen. A lot of the classes are doing that. And then the border, right? That is doing the same thing as the coin class, right? I have a function down here, which I'll show you what that does in just a second. But back in my main file, right, I'm importing the module I made. This makes your code more organized and reusable. Going down, right, here, next up in the process was all of our game objects. Who is in my game? Well, I have players, enemies, coins. Let me just run the game to show you real quick. Look at that, right? So you can see my player. I have all these coins randomly placed. I have a wallet, this thing I have to get at the end, my coin counter, an enemy, and I can move and I can collect coins along the way. You can see the coin counter go up. Now, if I touch the wall, I die, and the game resets. That's pretty cool, right? Is that something you guys want to put together, right? So these coins randomly appearing, right? I'm doing that through my functions. I'm using the random library, right? And I'm doing that, I'm placing 10 coins on the screen. All those walls you saw, I'm creating a different object for each of those, okay? And I'm adding them to a list. So not just am I creating classes and objects, I'm using data structures. Everything that you learned in the foundations and the fundamentals of Python, or in the last 7 weeks of my series, Mastering the Fundamentals, everything you learned can be used in a single game, a single application. That's why PyGame is the ultimate way that you can strengthen your understanding and become a better developer. We're using loops down here, and I have my events, we have all of our conditions, I'm checking if my player wins or loses, and we're resetting the game. Now I'm going to run my game. Remember, if this is something you're interested in, head on down to the link in the description. I have my courses available for you guys. Let's run it. To wrap it up, right, my player needs to go through the maze. It needs to collect all 10 of these coins before I can touch the final wallet. I just touched the enemy, I died. Okay, but you can see that everything resets. To win, I can't just get the final goal, I have to touch everything. Now I hope you can see how building a few PyGames to further your understanding is going to help you immensely, as it requires you to use everything that you've been learning these last 7 weeks to master the fundamentals and put them together in a single application, right? In today's episode, that's how learning PyGame or other modules, advanced modules, can help you master your core understanding of not just Python, but programming as a whole. And that's why I love teaching Python, because Python is a wildly used programming language, but I believe it's also one of the easier languages to learn in just the readability and the syntax. And by learning one programming language, it's actually going to unlock more doors and allow you to learn more programming languages along the way. Right? Guys, remember, get my handcrafted Python guide, and now it actually comes with Git to get you started. It's the first link in the description. Head on down there and pick yourself up a copy that you can use in your program journey today. And remember, guys, come on, smash the subscribe button. If you're still here, you'll learn something today, right? I want to reach more students, and by doing so, you're helping me do that. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this week's episode. Remember to comment below of what you guys want to see going forward. I will have PyGames coming out on here that'll be longer than my normal episodes, right? But until next time, thanks for coding with Josh. That's right, that's me. So thanks for coding with me, guys, and I can't wait to see you in next week's episode. Until then.